just so you can get the idea of the shape. Now, a cube can be drawn in a couple of different ways. So first of all, you could start by drawing a perfect square. Okay? So all the sides are equal and straight and to right angles. Okay, so you've got a square. All right? Then if we put a vanishing point over here, this is going to help us draw this cube into perspective. So what you can do is you can use a ruler, but you want these just to be some guidelines to begin with, and you want these edges to go off to this vanishing point. This is called 1 point perspective, okay? There. So this is how a cube would look in perspective. Now we're going to just draw in the edge of the cube, which is going to be absolutely straight and parallel to this one, okay? You can then follow these lines, and there's the top, and then you go straight down here. So this is parallel to this one. So make sure that's perfectly straight, and then you can join that one up there. Okay, so that's a 1 point perspective cube, okay? Now, another way is obviously drawing a cube from this view. Now this would have to be drawn in 2 point perspective. So you draw the edge of the cube, imagine that's this part here, okay? You're looking at that straight on. So now you've got 2 points. So I'll put a point there and a point here. Okay, you can come further along, it doesn't really matter. And I need to draw this side of the cube first. Okay, so let's just draw my vertical line here that's parallel to this one. Okay, make sure it is vertical so it's perfectly straight. So that's one side of the cube. Now let's draw the other one. Okay, now how to draw the top. You take this corner to that 1 point and you take this one over to there and you get your lid. There's 2 point perspective cube. Now these are very extreme views. When you are doing a still life, I'm not sure you're going to have that exact view, but it's just to be aware that when you are drawing shapes, there is going to always be an element of perspective. If you were doing a cylinder in this way, you could draw a perfect circle. Imagine you're going to do a drinks can or something on its side. Have the perspective point over here, and again the top and bottom would go to the point, and the curve again would mirror this curve here, and then you've got a cylinder in an extreme perspective as well. Okay, so this just helps you imagine these objects when they're in front of you. If you've got a big box or a big book with things sat on top of it, that's what is going to happen. Okay, right, let's try then doing some shading. So on a cube, it's really easy. You don't really need any blending. Okay, it's tempting, and maybe you'll find a need when you are observing a shape to do, depends how big that cube shape object is. But generally, if a light source is on one side of this cube, it's going to be the same on the whole of its surface because it's flat. Generally, if it was huge, yeah, you might have a little bit of blending, but generally it's going to be like that, okay? Let's now get a darker graphite pencil. Let's go all the way to an 8B to do maybe the top. It doesn't matter which ones you do, but the 3 sides are going to be 3 different tones. A very dark tone, a mid-tone, and a very bright tone, okay? Now, because this is flat, you don't have to curve your shading lines. You can do it horizontal and vertically as well. If you reduce the amount of scribble that is shown, it's better. And that is kind of a cube shaded, but you can create, you know, eliminate the outlines again by doing some background shading, for example. Because this is the important bit, to get rid of these outlines to make these shapes look more realistic. Okay, so you can draw all the way around them to get some background tone. And we can kind of go a bit lighter as we come around the back here, otherwise you'll lose the edge of that darkish shadow. There you go, and you've got your cube. So this is, it looks like this would be a bit too bright if you had a bright light here. There's so much shadow on the top that let's just get this a little bit toned down, maybe. And going from dark in that corner, maybe a bit lighter. But it's very hard to guess what the tone is going to be on a shape when you're doing it from your memory. You've got to rely on observation when you've got a square object in front of you. Okay, so for this, just from your memory, try and get each of the sides to just be 3 different tones and shade the background to eliminate the outlines, and that's it for the cubes. Okay, easy. We could change it on this one, so we could have this side dark. I think what is a little bit harder with the cube, especially with charcoal, so I will demonstrate that in a moment, is to make sure the edges are nice and straight. My pencils are getting a bit more blunt now. I'm going to have to start sharpening them. You don't want the edges to be fuzzy, and that's harder with charcoal when you're doing such a straight shape. So do 3 extreme different tones on each side of the shape. This will help you to remember when you're doing a completely square object and you're observing the tone, chances are most of the flat side is the same. It's the same shade all the way through it. Because it's flat, so the light would bounce off it exactly the same. Okay? And again, let's eliminate some of these outlines just to make it look a bit more realistic. I would take your time on your background. I'm doing this very quickly just so you can see. But your background needs to be nice and neat with sharp pencils as well. So now I've eliminated the outlines, it looks more real. Okay? So there you go, there's your cubes. All right then, let's do quickly the same in charcoal. So the same process, let's give ourselves a mid-tone first. So try not to use charcoal pencils because then the skill's going to be pretty much the same. If you're using charcoal blocks, then obviously you're going to be challenged and building your skills in a better way, aren't you? There you go. All right, so nice and quick, just cover the page. Right then, let's do a contour drawing. Let's do a 2-point perspective one, okay? Now you might rely on a vanishing point, or after practice you'll be able to draw one in, okay? Let's give it some background. So quick. But what you've got to be careful of is that these edges stay absolutely straight. So when you're smudging, these edges have got to remain perfectly straight and not fuzzy at all. The edge of your finger is a great way to keep it nice and straight, but if you need rulers, if you need a sharp rubber or something like that to make sure these edges are nice and straight, then that's what you need to do. Okay, right, I'm going to go straight in with my putty rubber here, or shall I put it on the top? Let me put it on the top. So with the putty rubber you can get a nice sharp edge and make sure that this stays perfectly straight. I do see a lot of charcoal drawings where they've gone so fuzzy on the edges. You want to try and make sure that doesn't happen. Okay? Make sure you go all the way into the points. See, I've gone over. I can put that back in there. I can go over these with my thumb like that. This is going to be darker here. So use the edge of your blocks or whatever you need to make sure that your edges stay very, very make that go a bit lighter. Now if you're losing the edge, you see, because it's going into the shadow, you can get your putty rubber and you can bring some of that edge back if you want to, okay? But yeah, just make sure all your edges are really nice and straight by the end of it, okay? So there's charcoal. See how quick that was in comparison? And look at the difference in darkness as well. So when you've got charcoal, you can see what's missing in your graphite. If your graphite is nowhere near as dark as your charcoal, you want to try and get that real dark tone in there, because the wider the range from white to black, the better the image. Now, a little trick with charcoal, especially if you actually use a different coloured paper, is you can go over the whitest area, because it is sometimes hard to get it back absolutely the same as your page, is to put chalk. Can you see the difference? It just brings it real white again. Okay, so you can bring in white. This would work better if you were using like a brown tonal paper, like brown paper. If I was to do a cube on this, you can see that the chalk would really make it quite bright. So you could do a whole tonal scale on paper like this, blending chalk into charcoal. So this is a great paper to have a go at universal forms and to do still life. When you're doing charcoal, you can do pencil, and you can even use a white pencil or a white pencil crayon to bring out highlights. It is possible, it is nice, it's just time consuming. Okay, so you can use a tonal paper and bring in white chalk very successfully with this one, okay? So there you go, there is your cubes.